first implementation of the Commander bracket system is officially revealed. Thanks to the folks over at Wizards of the Coast, Gavin and Blake, we now have our first look at the future of Commander. And short from announcing the Commander Pro Tour, we got so much information to go through. I just finished watching the stream, so in the beginning of this video, I'm going to provide some quick hits and some very quick summaries, and then after that, the bulk of this video is going to be going over the article that got posted as a supplement to provide a summary of all the information that was already discussed on the stream. Now, really what this is going to be is a testing phase, as I mentioned, and what's going to be important is not only criticizing this, but also trying it out for what it is, going to your Commander locals, going to your play group, and trying to implement this as best as possible. I personally have a lot of reservations with this, but also I'm actually kind of happy with a lot of various points of this, and I'm going to explain that as well. And that's the good thing. There's good and bad, and that's the best part about implementations like this. You go through testing, you get community feedback, and you ultimately provide a quote-unquote final implementation that they're going to discuss further down the line in April. But all of that and more, let's hop right into a quick doc that I made. So this is the bracket system itself. And there's 5 brackets: Exhibition, Core, Upgraded, Optimized, and CDH. Now Exhibition is lower than what would be Core, which is a pre-con. Core is literally just the average pre-constructed deck. Now Exhibition is those weird themes where you're going with every character in this deck has a hat, or everyone here, I think Blake actually had a specific example of people looking to the left, or ladies looking to the left, or something like that. So it's just fun little themes, no 2-card infinites, a few tutors. So talked about specifically how obviously there's no Grim tutor or Vampiric tutor, but there might be Enlightened tutor in there that's a little bit very specific. Core also kind of encompasses all of this and is slightly different, but in many ways these are the same. Exhibition is really your own take on things. Upgraded is where things start getting a little interesting. I think a lot of people are in the upgraded kind of category, and this is what I like about it. It's play styles versus specific cards necessarily. You're allowed 3 game-changing cards, and we're gonna go over the game changers in a sec here. Let me actually zoom in so you folks can see this a little better. And see the game changers. No mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, some late game combos, you're not going to Thassa's Oracle and whatever early game, but you have some of the more powerful cards. You might have Aristic Study, Smothering Tide, whatever. You have some of those staples, but beyond that, you're looking at Optimize, and that's kind of that threshold where you have these cards, you might as well go farther. And I think in many ways, Optimize is actually one of the better places to be, because I feel in this bracket, you definitely are okay with proxies. Upgraded and Optimized is a great place to be for not only testing proxies, but seeing what you like in terms of decks. Especially once you get to Optimized, there's such a very big line of 3 game changers, and then Optimized is just everything. No restriction, you just play everything. But Optimize is very different from CEDH. Now, CEDH is that rule 0 conversation, which is bracket 5, of everyone playing the best cards, the best lists, very key combos that many people in those colors are already playing. You're not really deferring too far, and everyone is focused on winning. You could play a very optimized meme deck, right? You can play a very optimized meme deck. You can play your duels, you can do everything. It's just now it's an optimized Exhibition or something. So again, I am a big fan of this. It is optimized. You are playing the powerful cards, and it's just broad categories that are largely based in strategy versus not necessarily highly focusing on specific cards. That being said, we do have the game changers, which is kind of the big thing here, keeping the vast majority of people in 3. Now, game changers are very interesting. So it's a list of cards that they believe once you have too much on, you're in optimized, or you have not at all, then you're in kind of lower power. And so this is where things get really interesting, because the spread of some of these, the lack of inclusion of certain cards, the inclusion of certain cards, very kind of divisive. And you see some key staples in here. You see Dranite Magistrate, Smothering Tide, Ristic Study, Thassa's Oracle, commanders like Grand Arbiter and Urza. You have Underworld Breach, tutors like Demonic Tutor, Imperial Seal. Out of the sideboard, out of the colorless, sorry, the One Ring, Chrome Mox, Mana Vault, Glacial Chasm. So many of these interesting cards. Gaia's Cradle is considered a green card versus colorless. They didn't make a separate category for lands. And the whole part about this is that this is Commander Brackets beta. This is an initial list, and they will likely be adding to this list. And so this is what the testing is about, really understanding if some of these cards even belong on here and how good they are, how bad they are. This will be a great place to bring unban cards onto as a watch list. And they made it very clear this is in some way for them to like print super high power cards into Commander, put them onto the game changers list, and then restrict your ability to play it. They opened up the stream letting everyone know that they do not want to restrict people in terms of how they are playing. Now, notably, if you take a quick summary of this, this is 40 cards, 11 creatures, 5 sorceries, 6 instants, 5 enchantments, 8 artifacts, 5 lands. Lots of creatures on here, which is kind of interesting. I think there's a lot of places for other artifacts to exist. Notably, you're going to see some of the Moxen not available, like Mox Opal's not on there, and Gavin specifically talked about how it's a bit more restrictive in something like that. If you're playing Mox Opal, chances are you either are in an artifact strategy, which is limited to that, or you're playing CEDH, in which case you're building around a certain amount of like powerful artifacts, like somewhere between like 10 to 15 that you're auto including in your deck as part of fast mana. And so that's again like a whole different category. So that's something to note. I'm not sure how to take this. There's like a lot of creatures in there. A Vorinclex Voice of Hunger is on here for some reason. There's some on here that are like kind of like Expropriate is on here. Is Trouble in Pairs like that bad? I don't know. Some on here I agree with. Some, you know, we're in the I'm happy we're in the beta. That's what I'll say. But past that, note that this is a big community collaboration. So they're talking about how certain, you know, the EDH Rec podcast, the Command Zone, they're going to come out with episodes on this. So they've likely been briefed on this ahead of time. And then different organizations and websites and tools that you're already in use of, Scryfall, Archidect, Moxfield, they will be coming out very soon, if not immediately. I'm not sure. It wasn't specifically said, with tags and different ways to separate things in your commander. And so they'll probably in your commander decks. And so there'll be different ways to kind of understand if your commander is like bracket 3, bracket 4, whatever. And I'm actually looking forward to this. I've been trying to do better with using my Moxfield a little bit more with my EDH content. So I'll be very excited to build like different versions of each commander. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a big content stream, like building a commander in each bracket. That's good, you know, 5 bracket commanders, you know, like every week you got 5 days during the week. Day 1, Monday, you're posting bracket 1 phage, bracket 2 phage, bracket 3 phage, all that stuff, bracket. So I think this is going to be a big way to push community content here, which I'm really excited for. But the fact that the tools that we know and love and we already actively used are being collaborated with is a big positive for something like this. Past this, there's going to be big testing at MagicCon Chicago with the final iteration in April. So they talked about how there's going to be a separate zone. Now, they ultimately can't stop everyone in the hall from testing this, and they encourage you to test this, but there's going to be a concerted zone in MagicCon Chicago in the command zone where different members of the community, different members of the panel are going to come around and see how these things are going. Like, oh, how is bracket 1 faring? How is bracket 4 faring? It's kind of nice that CEDH gets its own bracket. I'm very happy to see that they're being acknowledged in that front. So there'll be CDH games going. How's that separated from high power and all that stuff? So we're going to see all these separations. And again, with the final iteration in April, so late April is going to be that announcement of, you know, how we're going to land on that list, well, how we feel about brackets. I don't know if they're going to decrease brackets or add brackets, but they did say for sure that they do not want to ban any more cards, but they potentially want to unban some cards. And they specifically named Coalition Victory. And I just want to say, I told you so. There were so many people in my comments about one video where I talked about like cards that could be unbanned or why are they on the ban list. I said Coalition Victory, and so many people that don't know what they're talking about were telling me Coalition Victory can't be unbanned. You are the most uninformed Magic player if you don't think Coalition Victory can't be unbanned. There are so many more problematic cards in the format. Coalition Victory should have been unbanned years ago. And now we have literally indirect acknowledgement of them talking about literally them using Coalition Victory as a potential unban, hinting to it multiple times. It is probably coming off of the ban list and entering that kind of watch list, that you know, game changers list and all that stuff. Like, folks, come on, come on, Commander players, we can do better. But no bans is key, just potential unbans with the kind of implementation. Silver Border project is still on the table, but just not a current focus. That's one thing that they mentioned at the end. It's something that they did get from the original Commander Rules Committee. So it's not like completely off the table, but it's just not a current focus, which makes sense. You don't want to like kind of divide your focus here. I imagine closer to the end of the year, maybe after the summer, we'll probably get like some news moving forward with that. But it's really exciting to see Stuff like this is still in the conversation. And I like the way that they're implementing all this from a community perspective. They are giving us a trial. They're working with the community. They're working with different creators. They're working with different tools that we're already using, and they're going about it slow. As a project manager in real life, I'm a big fan of some of these steps that are being taken, kind of announcing it, doing the implementation, working with community feedback, using tools that the community already uses, not forcing people to use things, being very liberal and open with the things that we can do to make sure that this is a successful launch. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. In this next section, we're going to go over the article specifically, but those are the kind of quick hit summary. If you want to know anything and everything about the bracket system, that is the big overall. But let's go over the article itself. So introducing the Commander bracket beta. So I'm just going to kind of shrink my camera a little bit here, bring it up to the top right. Gavin Verhey. Hello, everybody. This is Gavin Verhey on behalf of the Commander Format Panel. Today, we're excited to share with you the beta test of our new Commander matchmaking system, Commander Brackets. In our last article in late October, we talked about a system like this that we've been working on and refining, and we have been. We put a lot of time and iteration into it as a group. It was really a big team effort. Today, we talk about them and share an updated roadmap for the future. Before getting into brackets, so the 3 important things to mention to set expectations. So expectation number 1, I expect many people who play Commander, nothing will change. You can continue to play with friends and how you want. So I think that's the big thing. Like there used to be the power level 10 scale, the ideas of rule 0. If you're playing with your play group with like no bans or anything, this isn't meant to hold you in a cage. This is meant to provide a more concerted effort and be involved in the Commander format now that Wizards of the Coast takes control of it, because a bunch of losers send out some kind of threats and everything. I'm still going to call them losers. That's what they are. But now we have a good step forward, but it ultimately doesn't change the way that you want to interact with Commander, because Commander is a community-driven format. It is the gathering, if not the magic as well. Number 2, this system, nor really any system, cannot stop bad actors. If someone wants to lie to you and play a mismatch, we can't prevent that. However, a lot of people just want to play games in earnest with decks like theirs. This aims to help that in regard. There are many ways to game the system. Be honest with yourself and others as you play with them. So obviously, there's going to be ways where you can detect people playing multiple game changers, and I like kind of naming specific amount of game changers potentially in like a bracket or two. That's a good way to catch stuff like that. But I also like how broad it is. Like the 10 power scale I found was like too minute, right? Like it was very hard to see where you're at. I like how general this truncated version is, and how wide certain brackets are. Like the middle 3 bracket is so wide, but then also, there is like a relative distinction, albeit small, between bracket 4 and bracket 5, CEDH and high power. So I really like that as well. Number 3, I do want to stress this is a beta test. Your feedback is going to be critical. While we are excited about this, we'd also be surprised if it was perfect. So please, I encourage you to tell us your thoughts. The Commander channel and the official Magic the Gathering Discord is a great place, as well as other social media outlets. Another place we'll be watching for feedback is MagicCon Chicago. As I mentioned, a portion of the command zone will be designated for this testing, and I expect members of the Commander Format panel and Wizards staff will be stopping by. Rest of the command zone will of course be available for space. Now the brackets overview. There are 5 Commander brackets. Brackets 4 and 5 are focused on higher power play. Brackets 1, 2, and 3 are focused on different levels of socially focused play. In each bracket description, you'll find guidance for 4 kinds of effects that can really impact games: 2-card infinite combos, extra turns, mass land denial, and tutors, noting where and how you should expect to see them. For a little bit of additional definition, mass land denial, this is a category of cards that most Commander players find frustrating. So to emphasize it up front, you should not expect to see these cards anywhere in brackets 1 through 3. I don't know. See, this is my problem. There are situations where this is where I start to get, because bracket 3 is so wide. The majority of my decks are in, I shouldn't say the majority. Honestly, the majority of my decks are probably bracket 4. But I have played the majority of my Commander career in bracket 3 with my friend group. And in there is mass land denial, there is mass land destruction, but we've evolved past the point, because we're normal human beings that can communicate. We have evolved past that point and actually understood what that means for our local meta. So we always kind of look out like, yeah, they're playing Armageddon, they're doing this, they're doing that. We just need to look out for it. We don't need to let it go too far. And it's kind of our fault if it just happens. And you know what? If they have all the answers and they were able to get us with it, sure, they get us. They're allowed to win with those type of decks as well. So I don't know if we just need optimized decks to be casting Armageddon. These cards regularly destroy, exile, and bounce other lands, keeping lands untapped, or change what mana produced for 4 or more lands per player without replacing them. For example, in this category are Armageddon, Ruination. I love Ruination in my mono red decks. Sunder, Winter Orb, Blood Moon. Basically, any card in common game plans with mess with several people's lands or mana they produce shouldn't be in 1 through 3. So again, these are the 5 brackets that we went over. Bracket 1, Exhibition. Experience, throw down your ultra casual commander deck. Bracket 2's easiest reference points is the average concurrent pre-constructed deck at its core. By the way, if you wanted more information as to some of these paragraphs that I'm going to be skipping, go into the article. It's going to be linked in the description box down below. Bracket 3, these decks are souped up and ready to play beyond the strength of an average pre-constructed deck. Optimize is just go wild. You're just playing like a bunch of powerful stuff. This is going to be also a relatively wide category. There's going to be people in here with like 5 game changers, and there's going to be people in there playing 5 color decks with like all the duels, whether or not, you know, proxied or not. Bracket EDH, this is high power with very competitive and metagame the metagame focused mindset. And so I think this is very, very important to point out, because the Commander Rules Committee did a very poor job of working with this kind of group, and I'm happy to see that Wizards of the Coast in their implementation is just off the bat acknowledging CEDH and just working with this as a system and allowing it to be more open and honest, which is good, because the vast majority of CEDH players that I've come across with, that I've interacted with, have been great people. They aren't the degenerate people that you think they are. CEDH games are very quick. They can be very fun. You just shuffle up and keep going, and they're very, very proxy friendly. I have one deck that's like half proxied, and the other deck that's going to be fully proxied up. I'm just kind of working on printing it now, and all these decks are going to be completely ready and completely open to be played. It's just up to me to pilot them well. Mindset is a key part of the description. Much of it is how you approach the format and deck building. It's no holds barred, but it's not just no hold barred where you play your most powerful cards like bracket 4. It requires careful planning. There's a care paid into following and paying attention to a metagame and tournament structure, and no sacrifices are made in deck building as you try to be the one to win the pot. Additionally, there's special care and attention paid to behavior in tableside negotiation, such as not making spite plays or concessions. That plays into tournament structure. And so that's going to be the very big important distinction between bracket 4 and bracket 5. Bracket 5 in CDH, you're not really making like table deals necessarily. You're not like doing things like conceding at instant speed so someone else can do this. There's like soft rules around that in CDH, whereas you could technically do those spiteful things and people will hate you for it in bracket 4. CDH, or competitive commander in similar names, is where winning matters more than self-expression. You might not be playing your favorite cards or commanders, as pet cards are usually replaced with cards that are needed in the meta, but you're playing what you think will most likely win. There's no restrictions here on that. So the game changer list. So you saw several mentions of this list above. This is something new that we want to introduce, and we think it will be a huge help for matchmaking and understanding the format. Game changers dramatically warp commander games, allowing players to run away with resources, shift games in ways that many players dislike, block people from play, efficiently search for their strongest cards, or have commanders that tend to take away from casual games. And unlike some previous systems that were discussed, it's only a single additional list to track. Now, this type of it's almost like implicit knowledge, if that's the right word, like knowledge. I might be using the wrong term here, but knowledge that a lot of people have to search out for. It's not going to be something that you get from just getting into Magic. Like for many people getting into pre-constructed commander, they might build up a deck. They may not be initially aware of something like this. So I think it's going to be up to a lot of community members, local game stores that have a lot of commander crowds in them, getting lists like this out there so it's open and accessible for those players. Getting large printouts of stuff like this, I think is going to be a great way for people to track stuff like that. In addition to that function, you can imagine that this is sort of a watch list. Any future bans are likely to come from this list, say from maybe something that shows up in a new set and immediately causes problems, like Nadu. Happy that they kind of immediately address that. Similarly, unbanned cards are likely to end up here. Coalition Victory. This creates a nice half step between the ban list and somewhere up everywhere. It also really helps ensure that you know what cards we have our eyes on, so cards won't feel like they're banned out of nowhere in the future, which is good. It also gives us a tool to unban cards to try them or nudge around cards without a ban needed. If a card shows up and is frustrating at casual tables but fine by competitive players, we can add it to the game changers list in an update to the right place, and that kind of takes it away potentially from being too much of a problem in bracket 3 systems. And similarly, if times or opinions change and a card on this list looks fine in casual play now, we can take it off. For example, I did a video earlier this week on kind of Mindslaver effects, and how Soren Markov has a Mindslaver effect on his ultimate, but was like a lot worse in Commander back then. A lot of people had a high opinion about it. Now people probably wouldn't bat an eye. They're like, yo, 6 mana Planeswalker that required 3 turns for you to even control my turn. I go to 10 life. It doesn't even really it doesn't matter that much. Okay. It's not unlike how Canadian Highlander adjusts point values every now and then. Now, to be clear, most of these cards are likely to be banned, unlikely to be banned. You shouldn't go trading away your Gaia's Cradles in concern. However, it's a clear signal for players knowing that these cards indicate a different kind of play that others might prefer not to play around them. There's 40 cards in this. They kind of break them down by color here. And then, you know, the Game Changers deck list. Quick recap here is we have the 5 brackets, list of Game Changers, and the upcoming roadmap is the last thing I want to talk about here. We want to leave you all with a better understanding of what we're doing next about when it'll happen. That way we can better anticipate updates. So we're going to give you a transparent look behind the curtain here. The first step is for you to try it and for us to hear your thoughts. I'm sure we'll start hearing feedback quickly, and we're excited to see a bunch of people trying this in person at MagicCon Chicago. Depending on how this goes will inform much of the future. Provided the system generally works and is heading in the right direction, we'll be making revisions soon after the MagicCon for any structural changes we want to include. Then, with the information of how all that went in mind, we'll be discussing any potential unbans. With the Game Changers list as a tool, we can potentially unban cards and add them to the list to keep them available at the higher brackets while keeping them at the lower ones. And I think this is really important. In many ways, I kind of like bring this equivocally to a game that a lot of people I think have probably played a little bit now, which is Marvel Rivals. And we see that in the plat in higher brackets. I believe it's plat. It might be the one above that. As you can tell, I'm not that high. I'm like a gold scrub. But when it comes to that game, you have a ban pick system at a rank and higher, and that's how you manage the super broken characters in that game. If you have a really fundamentally broken character that a lot of people can't unleash the true skill cap at the lower tiers, at the higher tiers where people just, I guess, are unemployed and just completely sweat godding, then you can ban them and then have a completely different game experience in the lower tables. And similar to that in Magic, we could keep these in the Game Changer list. Maybe we shrink the Game Changers to 2, maybe we increase it to 4, whatever it is. But this is a great way to keep a variety of them working together in the lower levels. And I think where the vast majority of players are going to be in that 3, like they probably have 1 Rhystic Sighting, maybe a Smothering Tide, maybe a Cyclonic Rift, and that's all they have. And those are the cards that they generally want to be working with. So I actually kind of really like this implementation, separating high power from low power and just acknowledging that it is very different. I think a lot of game systems are coming out with this type of acknowledgement in mind. And there is a level of accessibility that you should work towards for the general audience, but you also have to restrict it to a certain point because people will ultimately abuse it. Their bad actors are everywhere, and happy they acknowledge that early in the article. The goal here, provided the system works, will be to come back with one big article in late April that both rolls out the full system and any unbans altogether. And as we said back in October, no bans will be happening at this time, just potentially some unbans. So if you're eager to hear about unbans, late April is the date to circle back on your calendar. And if anything changes in the timeline, we'll let you know. This schedule is, of course, contingent on the system directionally working. Once we're through that, we'll work on getting regular cadence for updates when you know and you can hear from us. Hopefully that clues you in on a bit of what to expect soon. Now, thanks for checking all this out, and thank you for your patience. I, speaking as Gavin here, want to thank the rest of the format panel for all their work. They took the initial structure of an idea at Wizards mentioned last October and really evolved it into something that is much more workable and understandable while covering a wide array of Commander players. There's plenty of great debate and discussion, and while not every person necessarily aligns on every single element, I can see pieces from each person, and every person nestled somewhere in the DNA of the system. It's been really incredible to watch the team bring it together. We've had a lot of great discussions talking about it, and I'm excited for you to try it out. A fun exercise to run for yourself as you're packing for your next in-person Commander session is trying to bring decks of a few different brackets. And I think that's going to be the big exciting thing a lot of people are working for. Instead of like, my deck's kind of like a 1 and a 2, and precons are like 3 to 5. Like, you just, here's bracket 1, here's bracket 2, here's bracket 3, 4, and 5. And like the guidelines are much more clear. Like, the problem is going to be as to how much you can expand and abuse these brackets, because ultimately there are cards that are really powerful outside of these game changers. And I think that's where that list is going to evolve. So it's really dependent on how much that bracket 3 succeeds, that where those game changers are limited. I think that is going to be the true success and or failure of something like this. And that's what I'm really excited for, to see how people test it. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I've been trying to play a lot more Commander. Let me know in the comment section down below if y'all want to play some Commander with me. I love to play with some of my subscribers here, maybe even folks on the Mill Discord. But regardless, overall, when it comes to something like this, there's also a big Q&A. I would highly recommend y'all check that out in the bottom down below. But I'm honestly really excited for something like this. I like the implementation of it. I like the period. I like the whole kind of gathering community feedback. I like the implementation alongside community tools. And again, I like how broad and also very like clear and structured it is in many ways. So I think this is a great step forward for this format. A lot of people hate Commander. A lot of people, love Commander, whatever it is. Regardless of what your opinion is, I think many people can agree that an implementation like this is largely, at face value to me, is going to be a successful one. I think a lot of people are going to take this negatively, though. There's going to be members of the community that are just going to poop on this and just be bad actors and terrible people about it. Ultimately, this system could fail. The big thing that you have to do is, before you jump on this with immediate criticisms, a lot of people are just go to play Commander 1 or 2 times a week, a month, whatever, and will throw their negative opinions on this. Unfortunately, those people's opinions aren't that useful. I'm just going to be straight up here. If you don't play enough of Commander, if you can't add enough to the statistic, your opinion doesn't really matter in a situation like this. Go play more, go implement this, go try it out before you say something. It's like the same people that are like, oh no, I don't like that. Like when it comes to food, you're like, oh, you want to try this? Like, oh no, I don't like that. What? You haven't even tried it. That's what bothers me with stuff like this. As an eater myself, I don't get that with people. People take the whole idea of I can do whatever I want as much as they want. They get too uncomfortable with change, and I think that's the thing we need to move away from. There's too much of that in real life that's ruining people's lives. When we come to Magic the Gathering, let's be a little bit flexible. Let's be open and honest with other people, and let's be aware of the positivities when we're working with other people in a group. Let's focus on the gathering a little bit. Let's be, the first ones to implement this. Let's be the change we want to see in our game. And let's work with something that an organization that you would see as a large conglomerate in a world of capitalism taking over our world. There's small parts of it that do want to help us in some way, shape, or form. So let's reward that, I should say. And let's see where the Commander bracket system, the beta version of it at least, takes us in the future.